Or
Well, hold on. I thought I was, but I am not in the same meeting. There we go.
All right, the recording and the streaming are both on. Thank you.
All right, hopefully everybody can hear me. Nikki, can you hear me? Thank you. Anna, you're set up?
Yep.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. This is the Legislative and Policy Committee meeting here on May 17th. The agenda for this meeting is to call it to order, review the meeting agenda. And business items will be non-discrimination articles, data sharing procedures, policy changes, policy review, and other issues. So with that, I guess we'll turn it over to Carson, right?
Yep, sounds good. The first item has to do with a non-discrimination article that's included in different handbooks issued by the school district. The latest version here is the result of feedback from board members about how we should word some things differently. And so in here, I included the designation of Amy French as the primary person to work with, or as a human rights officer, ADA coordinator, Section 504 coordinator, and the Title IX coordinator. And then, you know, for now, I put Jess as a backup in case Amy is absent. That was one suggestion made by one of the board members. Also, under the reporting claims of discrimination, I thought there was a good suggestion that Anna had made. In a previous version, I had something listed as student advocate, and I think that could lead to some questions about exactly what that means. So I put down advocate. I don't know if that's the right term or not, but I wanted to at least address the other concern. So, you know, really the thinking is that if this committee was okay with this article, that I'd take it to an upcoming board meeting and then just change all of our handbooks and policies with the changes that are suggested.
Anybody want to talk to this? I got one comment here about hold back here unless you want to go first. Anybody?
Go ahead.
All right. I really question appointing Amy French as the human rights officer and ADA coordinator and everything here for our students and parents. I think it's right with our employees and such, but a human resource officer being in charge of it just doesn't seem to follow to me.
Yeah, and the thinking here, as far as having her serve in that role, is that she would really oversee the process. If there's a harassment claim, let's say submitted by a student against another student, Amy would receive the paperwork. But if it's a high school student, then George Nemenich or somebody on his team would actually do the investigation, come up with consequences, if any, and then report that to Amy. So Amy's role would really be to oversee it, to make sure that it was followed through with, to ask questions, make sure that our procedures are followed. So I think that, you know, really when it's a student issue, it will almost always be dealt with by, you know, a building leader. At least that was the thinking that we did.
And does she have the capacity to do all of that in her job? I mean, with, you know, I hope and assume there won't be that many issues that she's going to have to deal with, but just, you know.
Yeah, that's another good question. And if she's truly overseeing the process, I think that by and large, you know, she has the capacity or the time resource to make it happen. If she starts becoming intertwined with the actual investigations, especially if there are multiple ones, then there could be some time capacity issues. So I remember a few years ago, we had numerous complaints kind of all happening at once. And I know it was, there was time capacity issues for me and then also some of the building principals. And so, you know, we want to be cognizant that, you know, Amy could be placed in the same situation. The key though is to make sure that it's the investigation is farmed out to somebody else whenever possible.
Nikki, what's your thoughts?
I just heard Carson mention, like, you know, unless it was at the high school, then George would come up with some disciplinary action. I would like to see in the future as across the board, because I know what that disciplinary action is, and it hasn't done any good. It's the same one that targeted us ethnic people that got in trouble, yet the Washichu kids didn't get in trouble. And it's the same thing going on. Even I had reports with my daughter of getting sexually harassed in the middle school. And after sitting there saying, you know, what's going to happen? And they're like, we can't tell you. Well, I know that my daughter wasn't issued an apology, so I know that nothing was done because it kept happening. And I kept reporting it and nothing was done. Well, mommy took it into her own hands, and daughter joined football, and that boy never harassed her again. So I think we are doing a disservice to our students to allow some students to get away with things and some not. And I'm, like I said, I'm 20 years plus veteran in this school, and it hasn't changed.
Yeah, and I think that's one reason why it might be helpful to have reports like this going through one person, because then at least that one person can, you know, is completely responsible for receiving the reports, you know, from another school person, making sure the investigation takes place. And then I think it, kind of like what you suggested, Nikki, the best thing that we can do is actually follow up on those complaints, maybe 30 days or 60 days later, just to see if things are better or if there are continued problems. You know, so, and that would be Amy's role, is to kind of follow up or to make sure somebody else has followed up. And then also I think Amy would need to keep track of the different consequences or other actions that take place. So now it's easy for me to say that, but I think what you're saying, Nikki, is that, you know, we need to be doing things that are actually stopping the misbehavior. I mean, I think that's, you know, my guess is that that's the key message you're sharing.
Do we have a person who, you're like thinking in some corporations, there's a DEI coordinator, diversity, equity, and inclusion, who handles like other discrimination, diversity, you know, concerns at the district level? Yeah,
I wish that we had someone in that role, either a director or a coordinator of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's kind of on my list or our list of preferred positions, like in the HR plan. Right now, you know, we haven't funded it.
Okay.
I thought about the possibility of including it in a funding request using our ESSER 3 dollars. Because if we could find someone to, you know, with the right skill set who is dedicated to equity related issues, including human rights issues and other discrimination issues, I think it'd really have a positive impact. You know, we'd have to find the right person,
Right.
But you know, somebody trained, who's passionate, who is able to you know, learn, you know, about the things that we want to be doing. But if we could find that person, I think it'd make a huge difference. I wish I had a better answer. I wish I said, yes, we can do it. If we ever did have a position like that, then I think that person could work collaboratively with Amy, you know, to address those things. I'm not sure exactly what the breakdown would be as far as who does what, but that would be a natural place.
Yeah, I think, I hear what you're saying, Arlen, about, whether it's appropriate or not to have Amy be responsible for student complaints. I do like that there's one person who is ultimately in charge, for the reasons that you mentioned, Karsten. So considering that she's the best person, or that's the best position to manage this at this time, I think we should go ahead with this. But I think, that idea of having a DEI coordinator would be something that, we should, as a whole, continue to strive for, because we want to have equity and inclusion and anti-bias trainings on a regular basis. So if we can have a person who's responsible for making sure that that stuff is happening, I think that ultimately that would be good. And then to, make sure that things are being followed through on and all of that.
I've heard others say, with some other positions that, it would be helpful to have someone hired who wakes up every morning where the primary focus is this particular work. I mean, all of us should be focused on it, but, that work would be the focus, of a director or coordinator of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Well, I can't support it with a human resource manager being in charge of this stuff for students. I would be okay if Jess Whitcomb was on one side and an employee wanting to deal with it with Amy French, but I just think that connection to our students and everything is not through human resource. It doesn't fit in my mind. I just can't bring that back out of it. So I will be holding against it if it stays this way, and for that reason. But I do think the DEI we'll have somebody. I know we have to find somebody to do things until we do other things going forward. I get it, but I just think that's not a good fit. That's my opinion, and I'll be by myself if I have to. So I guess you're looking for us to recommend this forwarding to the board, is that correct?
Yeah, preferably, or if there's no recommendation, I could just add to the board agenda as well, either way.
I mean, we can't just sit here and not do anything. I get it. I understand it. I'm not going to block it from moving forward, but I am going to be voting no if that doesn't change when it gets to the board. I just have to stay true to myself on this.
Sure. Nikki, are you okay if it was at least taken to the board for discussion at the next meeting, so that at least we can get it to the next phase regardless of how it comes out?
Yes.
Okay. Arlen, if you're okay with that,
Yeah,
we'll just
I'm
pass
fine
it on.
with it. I wish I wasn't chair of the committee. I really do, because but I just got to say what I got to say, and I just feel that that's a bad fit, and I'll stay to that.
Yeah, and what I'll do, I'll try to remember in the background information is I'll at least express that concern, so that, it's, and you'll do it at the board meeting anyway, but,
Yeah.
at least try to get it out in front.
So if we're done with anything else on that part, now we'll move on to the next part of the agenda, and the non-discriminatory for the handbooks will be presented to the school board for review.
The data sharing?
Yeah, that is
Okay.
next.
Yeah. So last summer, there were some concerns expressed about the data sharing between the school district and some youth-focused organizations in the community. And so as a result of that, we've been working on different procedures and protocols, and many of those are listed in Article 5 of the Administrative Procedures Handbook. So this is that article. I kind of pulled it separate just to get feedback about this particular issue. And then, after possibly making some changes, then I'll bring back the full admin procedures manual for your review. But I thought this was important enough to at least put it as a separate item.
I'm just questioning, if I read through this, we're talking about parental release for surveys or parental not allowing it. And it sounds like some of this data is automatically released unless the parents opt out, but other procedures are only allowed if parents opt in. And
It's confusing.
it seems a little bit confusing to me.
And it's even more complicated than what's listed here, because as I've been, as contracts come through with different vendors, we're looking at the data privacy and data sharing provisions that are in those contracts.
For like databases, you mean?
Yeah, for databases, or I'll give you one example. Shred-it. We contract with Shred-it to come in and shred all of our documents. And so when their contract comes due, I want to look to see exactly how that's worded. And, there are just so many of those contracts out there that we're considering. Some of them are national companies like First Student. Some are statewide, like our bus routing company, the bus routers, which is separate from First Student. We have other local organizations. We have a wide myriad of contractors. So there's a lot here. I think originally the concerns or the complaints had to do with sharing, specific student data with organizations like Hispanic Outreach, Youth Outreach. I think that was kind of the starting point, but it's growing from there. So you're right. I mean, this is confusing as it's written now, but there's even this other layer out there when you start talking about our bus company, our bus routers, Shred-it, and other organizations. Even Goodhue County Ed District. I want to look at the provisions in our agreement with them to see if they should be enhanced. I wish I had a simpler way of doing it, but I just don't see how that's possible right now.
So is this something that's coming to the board soon? Because I think we talked last August about having something put in place by this year, August.
Yeah.
On a lot of the issues, or is this for heading towards that?
Yeah, preferably we could get this approved by the board in June, July, or August. It'd be nice to have everything buttoned up before the school year starts. Doesn't mean that all of the agreements, like with Shred-it and with First Student, will be done by that, but at least these data sharing and privacy provisions, I really want to be in place the best we can.
Have we found out or checked to see what other districts are doing on this? Like Goodhue and Lake City, or what our other districts our size are doing on this?
I think we are different than most school districts in that we do allow some community organizations to provide mentors for our kids. So I think that distinguishes us from other districts. So I would be very surprised if any of the other districts in the county have any similar provisions like this in place. And I'm not, I'm sure there's some out there, but I have no idea which school districts would have, such written policies or procedures like this. And I will be forthright. I know when Melinda spoke with Region 1 out of Moorhead, they provide software support, for our student management system, which is Synergy. And Region 1 had questions about, whether we should provide, that student information to community organizations. So, I want to be forthright about that. So they had questions in the end. Melinda worked out some understandings with Region, so at least we're kind of on the same page. But there have been those questions made.
So my experience with, like, I don't personally have access with any of my roles with community partners, but I have volunteered with some of the groups that do. So like, I personally don't see it, but like when I'm working with youth outreach, and working with a student, and we want to see like where that student's grades are at. I can talk to somebody at youth outreach who can pull it up. They don't share the information with me, but they'll say, they'll talk to the student or whatever. What other, so in my experience, I guess to finish my point, my experience, it's mostly been around like looking at students' grades and tutoring and help that way. What are the other ways that the data is being used, that's being shared out? Like Every Hand Joined, I think, is doing a lot of like statistical analysis, am I right? About like, comparing, the access that people have to different services and what their grade levels are and that type of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would say the other major area would be attendance.
Oh, okay.
So attendance, depends on the organization. Attendance, discipline, and grades would be the big three. And I owe you a student data release form. I said I was going to give that or hand that or distribute that, so I can show you the latest one there. And so we've been working on that to make it consistent with Synergy and Every Hand Joined, so that a parent, puts one check mark and then a certain set of information can be shared.
Okay.
So I'll send that student data release form. And certainly in the June meeting, we can look at that together. That would be, this would be the logical place for that.
And then what data is being shared without a release form? So I know how it looks when parents have signed,
Mm-hmm.
but if they haven't signed a specific release and they haven't opted out, what kind of information is being released?
Depends on the vendor.
Okay.
So for example, again, going back to Shred It, there is student information, staff information, all sorts of information that is eventually shredded by Shred It. Now they follow their protocols. They have certain privacy standards they have to follow. But in that case, at some point, they have that information literally in their hands as they're, putting it through the shredder. Another example would be for student bus transportation. They have access to information like student name, parents, their address, contact information. And obviously we don't, obtain a parent permission for each one of those. It would be a logistical impossibility. Bus routers would be another example where that information just shared. We share assessment data and discipline data with the state of Minnesota. That just kind of happens. So GCED is another example where, they are part of our child study team. And so they are naturally, receiving information without parent permission. The more we look at it, the more, it's, we realize just the extent, of all this. And, those entities I mentioned are working as school officials. And so, because of that relationship, we don't need the parent permission in advance. However, like with youth outreach and Hispanic outreach, Prairie Island liaisons would be another example where, they have more dynamic access to that information. And so that's why we want, parent permissions whenever we can. But literally, I could go on and on about other vendors we work with. And, I have to say this, I think this will have to be a work in progress because the more I look at it or the more we look at it, the more questions I have about it. Mm-hmm. And so ideally, I'd like to memorialize that information in here. So it's almost like, okay, this is for student, you know, with any transportation company, this is what we're gonna do. You know, but that will take a lot of time. Sorry for that long-winded answer, everyone.
Nikki? Any comments?
No, I'd make a comment if I had one.
Okay, we just want to make sure you're included there. I really have a hard time, once again, following along with this. If we're gonna do opt-out for some things, but others not opt-in. I hear what you're saying on these different things. As far as shred it goes, unless I'm wrong on it, I think they shred right on site. Any paper copies, that's one of the.
Yeah, they'll have their
selling points. They
machine
have their
out
truck
there.
with the shredder right in it, but I understand. I think there's a difference when we use the information to decide how to provide a bus route rather than what we're doing when we release our information through Every Hand Join, Youth Outreach, all these other organizations, Youth and Hispanic Outreach. I have all different things. I think the parents should have to opt into everything that's not done by school district employees for school district purposes.
That'd be impossible. I
Well,
mean, First Student is a perfect example. I mean, there's no way we could get 2,700 parents to sign a release form to share information with First Student. It'd be impossible.
well, maybe we need a different definition of what information we're sharing then. Or
Yeah, that I agree with. I think, you know, and, you know, like I say, when we take the layers off, you know, there are just so many different considerations. I was hoping I could have like multiple templates. One would be for community organizations or community partners is what I called in here. Another one for school officials, another one for, you know, other miscellaneous. But, you know, I came up with a template and literally the very next example, you know, did not fit the template. So that's why I'm thinking it's going to be a work in progress. But Arlen, you hit the nail on the head. You know, the community partners was the thrust of this.
I think if you go to Goodhue, Lake City, a lot of other districts, they're automatically doing this information to perform their jobs and functions as a district. But going back to my other question, how many are having an organization like Every Hand Join or Youth Outreach or I keep coming back to them, other organizations trying to get information out of our database. And I think that's very private and I think everybody should have the right to refuse to do that.
And they
I
do.
mean, we do have the right, but when you do some of them, well, you can opt in, some you can opt out, it's very, I think you just have to opt into everything, and you have a questionnaire at the start of the year that do you authorize us to release this information to Every Hand Join does this, and this with the information. Do you authorize us to release this information to them to do those surveys? Youth Outreach is an organization that does this, and this. Do you agree to let us use this school database to get information to them to do theirs?
Well, and
That's what I'm looking for.
for youth outreach and Hispanic outreach and Prairie Island liaisons, you have to opt in, right?
Right.
They don't get any information unless the parents have opted in.
Yeah,
correct?
well, there's, the community partners should have the parent opt in. So I am working with the Prairie Island Indian community to make sure that we're on the same page as far as how that looks. So that should be in place before the beginning of the school year. And the reason that's different than the other two is that, you know, because they are, you know, there are some different abilities for, you know, Prairie Island to, you know, to collect and share information about their kids. And so we're trying to hammer out the wording on that. But yeah, and I think the two of you together just said, you know, with community partners, you know, then it should be opt-in.
And that's what it is, right?
Yeah, and we've been working through that all year.
So then you just need to define community partners versus
School officials or whatever the
school
term
officials
is.
and related contractors.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where I'm getting hung up there, right?
I think we're pretty much on the same page, actually, Arlen. I think you're saying, okay, what is the criteria for opting in? You know, what kind of organizations have to opt in? And I think that's the part we have to figure out.
And this came up recently, because there's another organization that could potentially work with students and they want authorization to do that.
Right.
And again, it's an opt-in. I think my personal opinion is whenever it's opt-in, parents are like signing up for the services that these organizations are providing. And if they're opting in to join that, I think that there shouldn't be a reason why we don't share it. I'm more concerned, kind of like Arlen said, about the stuff that's shared without parent knowledge. Even if it's, they're told, but it's, the 17th line in a,
Right.
6-point font document. It's a little different.
Right.
But I understand the statistical significance of all of the information that gets shared. I think there, of course, there's just ways to do it so that it's,
I like your definition.
Sensitive information isn't being shared. But.
Right. I like your definition. As far as if students or parents are signing up for voluntary services provided by community partners, then it's an opt-in. Maybe I could incorporate something like that into the next version of this. And then, perhaps come up with a blanket statement for other school officials or try to differentiate. I just have to figure that out. One that just recently came up is, Fernbrook Mental Health Services. So where do they fit? And how are kids referred to that organization? There are a bunch of questions, like that. So, but at least perhaps for a starting point, what you just described at least could define community partners.
And Anna said this was from recently, but this goes way back to last summer with some stuff that
Right.
really went round and round, and it was just kind of agreed to go okay it for the next year, but have a plan in place by August so we can decide if we're going to continue to allow it or with who and what. So that's the background for me as being on the board from previous stuff, not just this one instance this year.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. It was definitely really got into gear last summer. That's when the issue first arose. And then more recently, it was another outside group that wanted access to some of our kids, with parent permission.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we doing with this at this point?
Should I take it back and just see if I can better define community partner or when parents or students need to opt in? Can I take another crack at that?
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I really think you got something there. Community partners, separating that from us just doing business as a district.
Right.
Everybody's statistic could somebody either in somebody else's mind of what they've observed and where you live or whatever it is. Those are surveys that people do of other people all along and stuff.
Right. Yeah, I can also possibly include something about the definition of a school official. That's memorialized in law, so it'd be easy. But then, even if I gave some examples, in the procedure manual.
Such as student transportation, such as.
Exactly. I wouldn't be able to list everyone because.
If you want to go into free and reduced lunch or not, I don't think you want to go there on that one, but.
Yeah, we're leaving that off for everyone unless Brent authorizes it. And so we have a good system for the free and reduced lunch information, but it's everything else. And so let me take another crack at it. And a handbook only needs one meeting to approve. And so I can come back with a second version in June, and then perhaps a third one, and then we could look at approval. Yeah, I like the examples too, because that gives a flavor for, when somebody's considered a school official and does not need an opt-in form.
All right, are we done in that category?
For now,
If, so then we'll go to policy changes, I guess, is that right?
yeah, I was hoping that I would have a list of policies with recommended changes by the Minnesota School Board Association. I have not received a notice, at least not that I'm aware of. I will tell you that the changes that we'll be talking about now are not from this most recent legislative session that's ending today. It's actually from a year ago.
Okay.
So after the legislature acts, then they revise the statutes, and then MSBA sends it to their attorney for review, and then MSBA makes the changes, and I'm sure there's some other steps along the way. So unfortunately, I don't have those to present today, but as soon as we get them, we'll get them on the docket for a policy committee meeting. Hopefully it's in June, if not July. July's pushing it though, because we need 3 meetings to approve policy changes.
Right.
So we'll see how that transpires.
You had in here June 7th committee meeting. Did you mean, because this committee doesn't meet again until June 21st?
Oh, for Pete's sake, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I meant the
I just
21st.
didn't know if it was a different committee or something.
Yeah, I'm sorry
If
about
I was
that.
screwed up on my days and times, which is
Good-
entirely possible.
Good catch.
Yeah,
I came here at 4:15 today because that's the time another committee starts. And
that's right, because we
Everything
meet
is locked. I was like,
the
oh.
3rd Friday of every month. So that would be the 3rd Friday in June. Usually those policy changes by the Minnesota School Board Association are pretty easy to adopt because they're based on state statute changes. So that process goes pretty fast. It's just the time that Lisa and I need to make the changes in the policies for you to take a look at, and then for you to ask some questions. So I wish I knew a list of the policies that we'd look at, but I don't even have that. So.
And you're citing graduation requirements, was that policy 613? I don't know if we should be really getting too involved other than that should just be inserted in the language that should be coming out of curriculum and instruction or some other.
Yeah,
or
that
just
one.
general school board discussion, really workshop, I guess, decide what are you gonna require for credits to graduate on. We did it last year, how many credits when we went to the modified block schedule that I don't know if we ever really got totally.
Yeah, and Jordan or Principal Nemenich did come up with proposed changes, but I got it. The timing wasn't perfect, and so I figured, no, let's let it sit, and so I can look at it and then include it in the meeting for June 20th.
I just think that that's just a matter of
Yes.
inclusion into the policy. It's not a decision that we would make as a group, what the graduation requirements would be.
Yeah,
I think
all of
that's
us will-
coming from
we have to
somewhere
approve
else.
it though.
Yeah, we have to go through the policy approval process because it's actually listed in policy, but George will, we'll follow George's
It'll
lead.
just be inserted into there, whatever is determined to be the right thing. I
Right.
guess, and come
Yeah.
through here to the school board by the process.
Yeah.
Although I would expect that if this other policies aren't done, we could make a change on the graduation requirements quicker.
We could. Yeah.
Because we have to get that handbook out maybe before all this other stuff is ready. Handbook's probably gonna have to be ready to go out in what, June, July? for sure.
Or July or early August usually.
Okay,
Mhm. Yeah, so I'm sorry, I wish I had the other policy changes ready, but we'll just have to see when MSBA issues those.
anything from you, Nikki? I know you said you'd speak up if you did. Just want to make sure I heard you if you did. All right, didn't. Okay, thank you. Next we're to policy review.
Yeah, so each year we review a certain set of policies, and they're listed in the board packet, starting with policy 214, then 413, and so on. We review them, and so what we've done here in Red Wing is we have the policy committee review it first, and then we take it to the board for the more formal review, and then we document that review on the policies. So in addition to the ones that we look at yearly, we also we do review 1/3 of the policies every year. So this year we'll be reviewing policies in the 400 series and the 500 series. And, we don't have to do those reviews before the school year starts, because typically what happens with a review, we'll ask some questions, we have some follow-up, maybe we'll make some changes, but usually it's just for better understanding of the policy. And then those suggested changes are usually made the following year, unless there's something urgent that has to be done right away. So the goal is to get all of the policies in the annual review list done as soon as possible, and then the other policies in the 3-year cycle, could be done sometime this calendar year. So, but we have some time. Or
your recommendation at the bottom says I move to include the review of these policies at the board meeting on June 7th.
Oh yeah,
I don't think we're really ready for that.
Yeah,
what you're saying.
If we were able to go through these today, sure, we can do it on June 7th, but it could be.
Typically, we only went through a couple policies at a time last year.
Yeah.
Some went real fast that were brief, but
Yeah.
some got more involved. So.
And I can easily change. I'm assuming we won't be able to go through all of them, but then we'd add it to the July meeting.
It looks to me like about 3 or 4 meetings worth of work there, just looking at the numbers, but I haven't seen what's in the policies, so.
Yeah.
214 is out-of-state travel by school board members,
Mhm.
and
Okay,
I don't see anything that needs to be changed in that unless MSBA changes something.
I don't remember what's in there
It's a
now, I
pretty
didn't go through it
straightforward.
really.
The
But I
one-
brought it up if somebody did a meeting for school board stuff in Ellsworth or Menominee or something like that from here as a school board member. Is
It's
that included in there?
out-of-state overnight travel.
Overnight.
So
Yeah.
like if I were to say like, oh, there's a school board conference in New York that I need to go to,
Maybe
and
we
then I
added
expect to
overnight
be
to it last year.
reimbursed.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
that's
think
why we
awesome.
addressed it, because it was.
But
last time around we changed it so that we could. So it's not improper to go to Ellsworth.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that maybe we added the word overnight to that, so it left it a little more open to us.
But basically, I think it's just that, if I am understanding it correctly, that if we wanted to do some sort of out-of-state overnight training or meetings or something, that we basically have to have pre-authorization. I can't just say like, hey, Red Wing schools are going to pay for my vacation because I'm going to go to a conference in Hawaii or whatever.
Exactly. Yep, you said that very well.
That's a good idea.
I know, right?
Just
If
the
only.
legislative policy committee, free trip to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Sadly, I'm sure this policy was put in place because of other school districts, I don't want to say misuse of funds, but use of funds in that way.
Yeah,
So,
we're a little bit different being on the border compared to,
right.
well, I guess probably half the districts are on the border really, though, aren't they? One
So
state or the other.
the next policy is 413, which is a really important policy. It is our harassment policy. So one thing our harassment and violence policy. What I did a few years ago is change some of our policies so that they would all refer to the same complaint process. And so, you'll see here with policy 413, that there's some basic definitions, and then it goes into, I'm just scrolling down here. You see, and then under Roman numeral 5, which is on page 7, it says complaints, grievances, and reports of harassment or violence. And so that paragraph is in a number of different non-discrimination policies so that we have one document to follow. I think it eases administration. And then each of the policies, like with the harassment policy, you see harassment or violence as abuse. And so, that's kind of different than a lot of the other policies.
Is this one that defined sexual harassment in there?
Yeah.
There's a background that goes to this a couple years ago that was, a situation developed here, and it was determined by the people that in our district that interpret things, and following what the state wrote, that it was not sexual harassment, but yet everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, most of the people around thought it was a situation of sexual harassment, and we actually proposed wording to the legislature and all kinds of other things. So there was a very thorough review of that here. I believe it was 2 years ago, or maybe 3.
Maybe 3 or 4 years
I
ago.
don't think it's 4.
Yeah, the statute in Minnesota law is archaic and has a very high standard for legal sexual harassment. And so that's the part that
And
we recommended.
it's the same for workers as it is for the students and everybody else. And we wanted to redefine it, but you had to be careful on how far you go on it and take a good thorough look at the policy, I guess, and issue your thoughts on it.
Yeah, the criteria
Ultimately,
is very difficult.
there was MSBA talk on even some of that policy in one of the years I went there afterwards. And yeah, the state statute is very broad, but doesn't allow a lot of determinations to probably be what they should be. You'd call it harassment maybe, but you can't call it sexual harassment. And I think that's what we got bound up on, was really the discipline or actions taken between the two are almost identical, but the person was sexually harassed in their opinion and was very upset that that's not what was determined. And I agree, in my mind, I felt it was sexual harassment. I said it was very plain here, but there's a words ands and ors and stuff that got really goofy in that definition from the state.
Yeah, by far the best thing that could happen is for the state to change what sexual harassment
And
means.
it's been before the legislature last year.
And then
but I
they
don't
talked
think
about
they
a
acted
working
on it.
group, and we still haven't seen any changes. So anyway, that's policy 413. Policy 414, if I can get there, is mandated reporting. And really this is, we don't have a lot of liberty to change this. This is based on state law. And, but again, this describes when we are obligated to report child neglect or physical or sexual abuse. So, and again, sometimes these reviews are more for putting things out to highlight them or to serve as reminders for us. And I think this is one of them. This is another critically important policy. Does anyone have any questions about that?
No, I'm just thinking that 214 and 414, because they're so based on state statute, that they would be easy ones to add to the June 7th meeting, so that they're at least 2 knocked off the
Sure.
list.
Sure.
But then the ones like, what was the last one? 412?
413.
413. Since that one is more custom to Red Wing, maybe
Sure.
we want to wait on that one so we have time to look over it more. What do you think?
That sounds good.
We gotta do
I'm
3
okay with it.
readings on this, don't we?
No, not for reviews.
Not for reprove after.
Right. So we've already approved it. We aren't suggesting any changes. And so really most school districts will have the administrative team review it, or they don't do it at all, or maybe a committee does it. There are some districts that are like us where the full board reviews it. I think we have a pretty vigorous process, which is good. I think we want to keep that. But we only need to present it as a review.
And that's what MSBA recommends too. It was the more vigorous process, I think, right?
Yeah, I don't know if they've come out with a particular statement about that, but the goal of this is to highlight our policies, discuss how we can improve things, and one way to do that is to go through committee and school board.
That's what it seemed like the last, was it phase 4 that I did? They talked about policy, and the recommendation was to do like the a third every year for 3 years. So
Right.
that you're constantly reviewing them and nothing gets kind of left off.
Statute requires all policies to be reviewed at least once every 3 or 4 years.
3
So
years. Mm-hmm.
That's why we did a 30 years to break it up.
Yeah.
The
I think
next-
415 is the same.
Yeah,
where I was
415 is the
about it.
same deal. You know, it's mandated reporting of maltreatment of vulnerable adults. Better keep track of these. 506, student discipline. You know, usually there are some suggested changes from the state in this policy.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if you're okay if we just leave that off the list for June 7th. But if you could take a look at that.
Mhm.
One of the goals in that policy is to list potential behaviors and then also kind of give a range of consequences. So you'll see in there that it's fairly vague, but that's intentional, just because of, you know, how things change. But MSBA almost every year has some changes. You know, people are vaping instead of just smoking, and,
Right.
you know, those kinds of things. 514.
Bullying. I
Fine,
could see
what'd you
that
say?
maybe taking a little conversation.
Yeah, bullying would be similar to the harassment policy. You know, they're kind of very similar things. The definitions might be different, but at least the way we process them is the same. So I'll assume that we'll look at that next time.
It's gonna be a fun meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Great, lighthearted.
522. I'm having a glitch here trying to get on.
Student sex non-discrimination. I think this might be one that MSBA has, maybe not. But maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but in the phase 4, they were talking a little bit about MSBA possibly having changes regarding like transgender students and bathroom use and stuff like that, and that it might fall under this policy. I don't know that they're going to make changes, but that kind of sounded like some districts are doing that, and MSBA might do something in regards to that.
How about if we include
But-
that with the other, like the harassment, bullying,
Yeah, that it might be some
discrimination, they're
conversation.
all very
You have
similar.
to keep your designation, IB, Title IX Coordinator, Dr. Beth Morgan, alternate Amy French. We gotta decide on a lot of these things, where and who's going to take the complaints and
Right.
determine what procedure is to be followed going forward.
Right. The next policy is 524.
Acceptable use policy for electronic information resources.
Do we maybe need a little more review by some officials to see how this fits because of how much we've changed in our?
That's true.
Yeah,
I
I think
don't
we should take
see
a little
anything
more
in here
time.
really in me, but maybe it wouldn't hurt to.
I'll have Kevin and Charlie double check
Okay.
and Mike Pagel, just to see if there's some additional changes.
Especially now that we're one-to-one technology and
Right.
that type of thing.
Next one is 806, which is crisis management. Just as an FYI with crisis management, this is the policy that kind of governs what we do in, you know, our procedures and practices. We do have a crisis management handbook, and we have the Prairie Island Nuclear Facility Incident Procedures Handbook. So we do have 2 handbooks that are closely tied to this, but this is the policy that oversees it.
This was 524, is that what you said?
524 was the technology
Acceptable
one.
use. Okay, what are we up to now? I'm sorry.
806?
Okay.
And I don't know, Beth Morgan was the one that was in charge of a lot of confidential things in this whole crisis lockdown procedures, I guess, isn't there, but there are some things that are not public, and I don't think the
Right.
school board even knows procedures that are taken in the event of, I'll just say an intruder in the building.
Right, yeah, and that's in part because we don't want to share that publicly, because then anyone would know what it is. And then the last one is policy 1000, and I think we need to wait on that. I'd like Jess Whitcomb to be part of that discussion. That has to do with an inclusive education plan. So the school district's required to have a plan. I put it as a policy just because then we know for sure because we want our school board to review this on a regular basis. And then just recently we decided to put it in the annual cycle of review. So I'll invite Jess to come to the next meeting.
It wasn't required annually before?
Yeah, well, by law, we're supposed to do it every 6 years. And but the policy as we had,
We actually slipped beyond that 6 years.
It was
I
like
think, if I
9 years or
remember right.
something.
And
So
if you look, it was revised just last September.
yeah.
But
So anyway, we want to, we've made a commitment to do it every year. And so, but I think we need a larger discussion about that, maybe in July or even in August. That's not too bad. We made it through a few.
okay, well, it's 5:44, so
We better get down to the next
Yes.
meeting. Thanks, everyone.
being that we've gotten this far through the agenda and it's 5:44, I'm going to adjourn this meeting so we can get to the school board meeting.
Sounds good. See you soon.
See you in a little bit, Nikki. Oh, now we gotta haul all this stuff down after.
Sometimes I feel like we're not making any progress.
Okay, Pam, the recording and the stream are both active. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right, good evening, everybody. It is the Monday, May 17th, 2021 regular school board meeting. It is 6:01 and I will call this meeting to order. First order of business is taking roll call, starting with Mr. Bryant.
Here.
Ms. Buck? Mr. Derricks?
Here.
Ms. Ostendorf?
Here.
Ms. Tower?
Here.
Ms. Tift?
Here.
And Chair is here. So we currently have 6 board members. I'm anticipating that Ms. Buck will be joining us momentarily. We'll go ahead and stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Mr. Bryant will be sharing our vision and mission this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. The meeting agenda has been presented in your board book. Do
I'd
we have
like
any
to,
changes or additions to the agenda?
I'm sorry, Pam. Yes, I'd like to change or move the business item entitled Sister Cities Young Artist Showcase and put that between the educational plan and recognitions and upcoming events.
Any other changes or additions to the agenda this evening? All right, seeing none, then I will look to entertain a motion to approve the agenda with that change, moving Sister Cities Young Artists directly after the educational plan.
So moved.
Moves approval.
Second, do I have a second?
I'll second, Tift.
All right. Any other discussion or changes? All right, we'll take a roll call vote on the agenda, starting with Nikki Buck.
Aye.
Mr. Derricks.
Aye.
Ms. Ostendorf.
Aye.
Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Ms. Tift.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
And chair votes aye, so that passes 7-0. All right, the educational plan is up here on a poster here, but it's also included in our board packet, so I'll just call your attention to that. And with that, I will go ahead and move the Sister Cities Young Artist Showcase as our next item of business.
I'd like to introduce Kristen Bray, a high school art teacher who has been working with the Sister Cities Young Artist Showcase, and she'll explain a little bit about the program and then 3 winning entries.
Hi. Well, thanks for having us today. I appreciate being invited to come speak about this. We've been busy in the art department. It's been an interesting 2 years trying to teach hands-on classes like ceramics during distance learning, but we've been doing a lot of really cool things. We've produced a couple yearbooks, which has been a challenge. We had a great art show at Red Wing Arts with over 30 student artists in grade 7 through 12. That was up for over a month. We have the SOAR Art Contest going on now, and we're here tonight to talk about our Sister Cities collaboration. Each year we work with the Sister Cities Commission in Red Wing, and we participate in the Young Artist Contest. And so students get a theme each year, and they have to create an original artwork based on that theme. And so our students did an amazing job this year. They started a new quarter of classes, and due to the timeline, they had to kind of dive right into this project, but they really did a fantastic job. I'm going to share my screen and show you the slideshow that Sister Cities put together of the student works. So I don't know if you can all see this or not, but Oh, and that's not the one I want to share, actually. Sorry. All right, give me just a minute here. I do have, I think just one of my students is here to talk about her artworks. Oh. Sorry. I want to stop. I do this every day. You think I'd be smoother at this. The theme this year was United in Hope. And so the students had to think about how the pandemic has affected our world, essentially, the fact that it was one common struggle that all countries have dealt with in the last year, and how we can come out of that resilient and united in hope. So these are the artworks that the students submitted. We had a really good variety of different media and different content, but it's neat to see them use their voice and use their creative talents and skills to present that voice. They also all had to write an artist statement to go with their works. And so that's what you see at the bottom of these. If you want to take time to read the artist statements, this is posted on the Red Wing Sister Cities Facebook page. This is Izzy's artwork. Izzy got third place, and I think she's also part of the meeting. She's going to read her artist statement and talk about that work. So it's a pretty broad topic, and so it's neat to see how they all take it different directions based on their artistic styles, their experiences, their visions, and also their own hope. This was Hannah's. Hannah got second place. And this is Cole's. Cole was our first place winner this year. So all three artists will have their works go on further in the competition. It's actually a worldwide competition. We've had students the last couple years that have been able to go on and get to the finalist level, which is really neat. So that is an example of the artworks that our students submitted. I think Izzy is on. Izzy, if you want to talk about your artwork.
Yes, hi, sorry, my mic was not working for a second there. So should I read my artist statement then? I might need to.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll try to put your artwork back on the screen if you want to read your artist statement and talk a little bit about it.
Okay, cool. My computer's being slow. So, yeah. But basically, before I read that, like, we had heard a bit about like previous themes, and I wanted to not just use this year's, but also kind of think back to what they had done in the past. So like, I believe one of them was how we're like staying connected. And I really liked that idea because through technology, we're sort of able to be connected. I mean, like I'm here on a meet talking to you all, which is cool. So my statement is, when I think about themes like hope and being united in a time of crisis, the first thing that comes to mind is how connected we are through technology. Technology has allowed us to get information, to encourage each other in this time where staying connected is tough, to provide support for those who need it. It is an incredible thing, the concept of strangers going out of their way to encourage one another. The wire that surrounds the figures connecting them represents this beautiful thing that we have been able to see in recent times. It shows us that even in times where we're not allowed to see others, people will always find ways to remain in touch. And I just think that's a really like neat thing, how people on the internet kind of go out of their way to provide support to others when they see they're going through a tough time. So yeah, I don't know. That's my drawing. So.
And Izzy did her work digitally, which is really cool to see more students doing now. A lot of them have their own tablets and are able to complete their artworks digitally. So Izzy was the winner of $50 from the Red Wing Sister Cities Commission for her artwork. So
yeah, very cool. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks for.
Yeah, thank you, Izzy.
Congratulations.
That's
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. And I don't think the other two could make it. I know Cole was absent today and Hannah had to work. But I encourage you, if you get time, to jump onto Facebook and look at that slideshow and read their artist statements and view their artwork even closer. So
Their
yeah, so
artwork's
thanks again for
very
having us.
awesome. Yes, thank you. I think I need to go now, but
Thank you, Izzy.
thank you.
And thanks, Kristen, for doing this
Yeah.
work. What a great way to for people to express their feelings.
Yeah, art is a great way to share their voice, and we're really happy to have the opportunity for them to be able to do that in many different ways. And thank you for having us tonight to share that.
Go.
Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate it. Thank you, Izzy. Next on our agenda this evening is recognitions and upcoming events, which is a great segue because we've already had a little bit of that. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add or share for recognitions or upcoming events? I'll just announce that this Saturday is prom. I believe it's going to be outdoors, and the Grand March is 6 o'clock. It is open to the public. If you bring your lawn chair, it'll be outside. I know the kids are really excited and happy to be able to have a celebration because last year that wasn't the case, and so that's a little step towards normalcy, which is great. And also graduation is coming up on June 4th. It's always that first Friday. That's the tradition, at least in Red Wing, is the first Friday of June. That's at 7 p.m. It is also going to be held outside, and there is no limit to how many people we can have at graduation. If it ends up being inclement weather and we have to be inside, then each student will have 4 tickets. And I believe we'll be talking a little bit more about graduation later on in our agenda and how our board will participate this year. So other announcements or recognitions you'd like to share tonight? Okay, seeing none, then we will move to public comment, which I have not received any public comment, nor has the superintendent. I see nobody here in our presence for public comments, so we will move on to the next agenda item, which is the return to school. And that is Mr. Nemenich and Shonda Jorgensen.
So, can everybody hear me okay? All right. So, I was gonna talk about graduation. You went through all the good details, so
Sorry, George.
no, that actually was a great kind of summary of everything. Hopefully, we're hoping that the weather holds and we'll be able to be outside, of course. And I know I did have, and I just want to say this publicly, that I've had some people ask, why do we all have to wear masks at the graduation? And maybe that'll change. I don't know, but at this point, the governor's basically said any group of more than 500 people, we have to wear masks. However, I mean, you never know. I mean, things have been changing quickly over the past few weeks. So we'll see about that. And that's what I've been basically telling folks who've been emailing and wondering about that. But we will hopefully have outdoor graduation, like I said. If we have to go indoors, we do have a plan to be in the gymnasium. And as Pam mentioned, we'll have 4 tickets for each senior so that at least 4 family members can come and be a part of that and in the gymnasium. So, again, I'm hopeful that we don't have to go that route, but we do have a plan in place. And we're going to make the call on Thursday, kind of probably late afternoon. We'll know the weather and make that call. We had a meeting with our maintenance and buildings and grounds just to see what kind of timeline they needed to set things up. And so that was kind of the idea, is that we could give them enough heads up with a Thursday call. The closer we get to it, as you all know, the better, because the weather's been so doggone unpredictable lately. We do have a plan as well. I just wanted to add this part of the graduation. Of course, in the morning, we do have a rehearsal for our seniors to go through. So I just wanted to add in just some details on that. That'll start at 9:15 in the morning. The seniors come, we want them to come to the cafeteria for a continental breakfast. We have a senior speaker at that time. It'll be CCB Young. The students voted on her being the breakfast speaker. So congratulations to her for getting that honor, and she'll speak to her classmates. And then there's a class picture at 10 a.m. And then following that, the students will be going out to do some, hopefully out to the stadium to practice for graduation outdoors, or it'll be inside. And then I want to mention as well, we have a speaker for graduation. Emma Crombeck is the senior speaker for graduation. She was voted by her peers for that role as well. So congratulations to Emma. One thing that we're struggling with, and this is what may impact this particular group here, is the stage is 16 by 16, and we've usually had quite a few people on stage. So what we're thinking, because of just spacing and things like that, we're thinking maybe just those who are involved in speaking be on stage, and then we'll have like a special area for anybody in attendance, any other board members and or our school administrators, things like that, that would be in attendance would be near the stage but not on it, just because of the distancing factor. So that was kind of the thought there. And we do have the graduation robes and regalia that will be available to all of the board members, of course, and faculty involved. So
George, will the procession for board members and faculty remain the same? Will we meet then on the 4th? Anybody who can and wants to attend should meet where and when?
Okay, so that's so I think at the in the cafeteria, we'll start the procession at the cafeteria, and then we'll proceed out from there. So kind of we'll proceed from the back entrance there, and then out to the outside. And I think the way we're going to approach the field is, so if you're looking at the bleachers from the school, we'll go to the right side and go out through there. There's a sidewalk there. It's kind of nice, and it's a little better, I think, footing for everybody. So that'll be the approach to the field. Trying to think of anything else. Probably it. So. So probably be a good idea as far as the. I would say maybe be there by 6:30, or maybe even a little bit earlier than that. I'd say 6:15ish, because we'll be going out. The graduation ceremony itself will start at 7. So, you know, the processional before that will probably begin about 6:45ish. So.
Thank you, George.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that I have done a number of these through the years, and it's one of the best nights of the entire year. So if you can make it and you feel safe to do so, please join us, because it's a really great event, and it's a great way to honor and be there to witness our senior graduating class.
Yeah, and it's been quite a few years since we've done it outside, so if we do get to do it outside, it'll be kind of nice.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I told you at our agenda meeting that I probably would not attend, just because we don't know today where we're actually going to be. One less person there might, whatever. Don't get me wrong, it's an exciting night. Graduation, standing on that stage 2 years ago, shaking their hands, seeing their smiles, the parents down with pictures was wonderful. And I didn't have anybody graduating, but the chair will be speaking. If for some reason that comes, she can contact me if something happens, you can't do it. I'll be there. I'll be there in spirit, but not in presence unless I'm needed to fill in for just one less person to worry about and all that with this unusual times. So thank you though, George, for filling us in and all that.
Absolutely.
other updates for return to school?
I'll just throw in a quick comment. We received the latest projections for Goodhue County, and we've been at 48.47 for 3 weeks in a row, and we'll be at 22 here with the latest projections. So it's good news for the county in terms of our COVID rates.
They're still 2 weeks behind?
Yeah, they're always 2 or 3 weeks behind.
Is this when you wanted to talk about the change in mask wearing for school board meetings?
Yeah, if you'd like. Yeah, and so go ahead, Pam.
I was just gonna say, I'm sure all of you have received an email from the Minnesota School Boards Association. They have said that the Minnesota Department of Education has weighed in and says that the mask requirement for Minnesota schools pursuant to Safe Learning Plan is for during the school day and school activities, which means that in the evenings in our school board meetings, we no longer need to wear a mask as a requirement. The school board may choose to impose a mask requirement for school board meeting attendees if it wishes to do so. We're not going to make a decision on that this evening. Jackie just sent us the mask policy, which is 808. But we can discuss it and see where people are at. The school itself is going to continue, all staff and students are going to remain wearing masks through the end of the school year, which makes sense for us to also do that through the end of the school year, but I'm completely open to what this board would like to do and where their feeling is at. So Holly, you're in the queue.
I might have missed it, and you might have said it. Was that you didn't have to wear a mask if you were vaccinated, or it didn't matter?
It doesn't say anything about if you were vaccinated or not.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Okay.
All right. Anybody have any comments? Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. For someone that's been fully vaccinated and somebody that's ready to discard this thing that's on my face, I fully understand though the thoughts and things that people want to do, and I totally support everybody that chooses to wear a mask and all that. So I think, as much as I'd like to not wear one, I think we need to follow what currently is going on in the building. So if I remember right, June 4th is a Friday. Our next meeting is the 7th of June. The school year is over on the 4th. So technically after our next school board meeting, we may be able to not wear our mask. But in the meantime, we're workshop next week, and I'm fully on board with continuing it on, but I think we're all ready to get back to some normalcy, me included.
And for those of us who are here in person, we are all socially distanced, so that's another extra protective factor. So we'll just see how it goes in the next week. Arlen, I see your name in the queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good news to hear that things are starting to lighten up a little bit, and we're getting to the point where maybe we can get rid of these masks. I think it would be the wrong message if we as a school board did not wear our masks until school is out. We are in the media center, which is used by our students. We're in the same building as our students are in. And I think we need to make sure that we follow through until the end of the school. Like Jim said, I'm very receptive to considering lifting the masking requirement as long as we can comply with all laws and such on once the students are out of school here. So by June 7th, they're at that meeting, make a decision at that meeting. But I am fully behind getting rid of the mask unless something changes, if we comply with law, but I'm not in full favor of doing it, no matter what the law is, until our students are no longer required to wear masks.
I completely agree. So it sounds, yes, Jim?
Let's just throw it on the last part of our workshop next Monday to have a little further discussion because just see, we can't make a decision there, but we can have a more discussion
Sure.
since we
Great
just
idea.
kind of added to the agenda
Yeah.
tonight. meeting.
Yeah. Will you make sure that gets on the agenda since we can't speak about anything that's.
We're
not
down for
there?
about 10 minutes, and I think that's all we need.
10 minutes.
No problem.
Or less. Great. I'm seeing a lot of head nods and agreement, so we'll bring that up next Monday when we get together and just see where we're all at. But it sounds like we're all on the same page this evening, which is great. Good, thank you. Anything else on the return to school, Arlen?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if we're going to talk about that masking a little bit, I would like to, we're going to have to make a decision on as soon as we can get information on what our masking requirements will be for school activities and such in our building over the summer. So hopefully there'll be some information that can be shared that's as current as of the time of that workshop on what may need to be done or not done, because those decisions will have to be made as we educate our students through the summer and how we're gonna respond to all that. So if we could have that information next Monday, that'd be awesome.
Thank you, Arlen. That's a great point. I will add that to our agenda committee meeting for next Tuesday.
We don't meet next Tuesday.
Right,
Two
yeah.
Tuesdays.
And I know the governor's going to be issuing some guidance as far as masks and other mitigation strategies for this summer. And so as soon as that is issued, then obviously we'll bring that to the board for review. Hopefully it's this week, we'll see.
So maybe we need 15 or 20 minutes at the workshop for that item. I see Shonda Shonda answered it. Okay, perfect. Well,
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we're still waiting on the guidance for summer. They did point us in a direction, but that document was written on 5/6, and all of it in there still has masking, still has distancing, still has everything in it. So we anticipate something coming down the pipeline in the next, hopefully, week, so we can prepare for summer. So as soon as we get that information, we'll forward it on and we'll go from there.
Perfect. Thank you. Anna?
How soon does summer school start? There are some programs in June, right? How soon does that start up after the board?
George?
Well, I can say, yeah, the 9 through 12 credit recovery will start the next week after school's out. Correct.
And there are many sporting programs and student activities that start right away that Monday at 7 a.m. on the 7th. So,
Great.
yeah, the sooner we have that information and be able to disseminate it, the better. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Hopefully that'll be coming this week. All right. Anything else on return to school? All right. Well, thank you, Shonda and George, for being here this evening, and we'll move on in our agenda then to school board reports. The first one listed there in our board packet is finance. Any updates on finance? No updates?
Nope, not as of today. We meet at the end of the month, so we'll have some June 7th. And I'm not going to say anymore.
Okay, sounds good. Operations, anything new to report?
No, Madam Chair, it was canceled last 2 weeks ago. There was not enough topics, so we'll go again first,
Okay.
June 7th, if there's a need.
We have nothing new to report for personnel since we last met. Legislative and Policy Committee, anything to report?
Yeah, this is Arlen Derricks here. I'll give an update. We met today prior to the meeting. We worked on the non-discrimination article for policy. We discussed data sharing procedures, and then policy changes. Trying to remember what items those were on.
Policy review as well.
But then the policy review, we're working on several items. We went over them, and some of those will be ready for approval at the June 7th meeting, I believe. I was trying to get all the different numbers here back out of the agenda, and I lost them for whatever reason.
I have 214, 414, and 415 that we think can go to the board at the next meeting because they're pretty straightforward policies. It shouldn't require a lot of discussion. there are others that we're gonna review more at the next policy meeting and then bring them to a future meeting, probably July.
Thank you, Anna. I found my policy numbers here now, but that's, so anyway, there will be some stuff coming, but we got quite a bit accomplished, I think, tonight in certain areas, so.
Great. Nothing new to report for negotiations. All groups would like to wait until we get more guidance from the state on what our funding situation will look like. Any other meetings that anyone would like to report on this evening? All right, seeing none, then we'll move on to administrative reports, and I'll turn that over to Superintendent Anderson.
I'll just highlight a few different topics because a written report is included in the agenda packet. First, I'll highlight a public hearing that will take place on June 7th regarding the potential closure of Jefferson School. By law, we are required to have that public hearing, even though it was a one-year understanding. At least that's the advice that I received. Unfortunately, we did cancel the end of the year celebration that we have each year for employees who are retiring or have served 25 years in the district. And again, there are so many questions and unknowns when the decision was made. I just decided to wait one more year. That's unfortunate. It's one of the highlights of the year because so many people like to get together, greet each other, and recognize one another. But because of that nature, it just made more sense to wait so that we can have a safer environment for everyone. The notice for the meetings have changed to reflect a Department of Administration ruling that came out saying that we cannot meet together without in person without allowing the public to join us as well. So anyone from the public can be here at these public meetings or at the committee meetings, even though we have a hybrid setting. And so I just want to let you know that the reason that we decided to do that was simply because of a Department of Administration ruling or interpretation. The next item has to do with again, the plan is to include all board members in the anti-bias diversity training during staff in-service week. The equity team also recommended a change to a policy that includes a provision about providing that training to board members. And so at some point in the near future, the Legislative and Policy Committee will review that possible change before coming to the school board. You can see the potential topic or the topics for upcoming board meetings. The board workshop a week from tonight has to do with online learning, school board pay plan, and as we just discussed, policy 808. You can see kind of a snapshot of some potential topics for the June 7th meeting. There have already been some additions based on the Legislative and Policy Committee meeting and some other places. Pam, Jim, and I review the agenda the Tuesday, typically the Tuesday before a meeting. So this is just a quick snapshot now, and then we'll review that agenda when we meet together. And then you can see a list of potential workshop topics in the future. We're starting to address a lot of those, so I'm excited about that. That's all I have.
And as always, if you have suggestions or ideas for future workshop topics, we're always wanting to add to that list, things that you want to learn more about or have a deeper dive into, things that we want to discuss. Please bring those ideas forward. We'll get those on the list. And we'll get those worked into our agendas for workshops coming up. Holly.
Did you want any ideas now, or did you want us to email them?
I think emailing them would be great, if you don't mind.
Okay.
That'll keep us moving along. All right. Anything else, Superintendent Anderson?
That's all for now, unless there's some questions.
See no questions, so we'll move on to item number 3.1, which is the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything they'd like to pull from the consent agenda? Mr. Bryant?
Madam Chair, I'd like to have the minutes pulled from our last meeting.
Okay,
I'll explain why.
all right. Anything else? All right, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda minus number 1, which is the board minutes for May 3rd, 2021.
So moved.
Anna,
Second.
Second by Mr. Bryant. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, then we'll take a roll call on the consent agenda minus number 1, starting with Mr. Derricks.
Aye.
Ms. Ostendorf.
Aye.
Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Ms. Tift.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Ms. Buck.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. That passes 7-0. All right, now we'll address number 1, board minutes from May 3rd, 2021.
Madam Chair, I was not in attendance at the meeting, so I wanted to abstain. So I didn't want to abstain to the whole consent agenda, just to the part that I was not in attendance for.
All right, so Mr. Bryant was not in attendance on that date, so if we
I'll
can make,
abstain from my vote when you call my name.
sure. So we'll make that change in the minutes.
Or I don't think there's a change to make. He's just explaining why he's gonna abstain.
Oh,
Otherwise, I had to abstain for the whole consent agenda.
I
I
gotcha.
didn't think that was
Sure.
necessary.
okay. Sounds good. Well, we will take that roll call vote then on number 1. Oh, no, I need a,
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
okay.
I have something really quick.
Yeah,
Need a second
It's-
ballot.
It says I was absent. I don't remember being absent.
You came later, Holly. It says that you were absent for the call to order, and then it lists later when you arrived.
Thank you.
Oh, now I see it, between 2.2 and 2.3.
Perfect.
all right. So Anna made the motion to approve the board minutes number 1. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Tiff.
All right, any other discussion? So we are voting to approve number 1, the board minutes. We will start with Ms. Ostendorf,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Hi.
Ms. Tift,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
You have abstained?
Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. So that's 6, 4, and 1 abstain. Okay, moving right along, donations and grants. Superintendent Anderson.
Yes, we have 3 donations. 2 of them are from the Red Wing School Foundation. Let me just find the applicable page here. As always, the school foundation provides so much support for our students and staff members, and we thank them so much for those donations. This time it was $820 for Hubda Hall microphones and $520 for Corey Hill virtual experience. We also had a donation from the Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation of 500 books in English and Spanish to increase at-risk families' access to literature. That amount was $9,475. So thank you to those organizations for that.
Amazing as always. I'm looking for a motion to approve the attached resolution accepting donations and grants.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
Second by Holly. Any other discussion? We'll take a roll call vote to accept those donations, starting with Ms. Tower.
Hi.
Ms. Tift,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Ms. Ostendorf,
Aye.
Chair votes aye, that passes 7-0. Thank you again for those amazing donations. COVID leave under the American Rescue Plan Act. I'll turn that over to Jackie and Amy to discuss further.
All right, Amy is on the call with us. I am here in person in the media center. In your background information, you can see the information we presented previously is at the beginning of the page. If you turn to page 2, you can see the 5 options we looked at. And I'll just kind of run you through why we chose option 3 as what we're recommending. Option 1, if we implement the plan as written, every part-time employee who works this summer would get 10 days of paid leave from the district. Every pool staff, every high school kids junction staff, all of them. And if we don't have tax credits to pay for them, the community ed fund balance does not have fund balance to pay for them. As unfortunate as that is the situation if we implemented option 1. Option 2 would be to implement it as written, but only until the end of school. This would mitigate the need for the summer staff, but still could be costly to the district if there is not tax credits to implement it. Option 3 would be to allow any employees who have not used up the original 10 days from the Families First Coronavirus Act to use them up before the end of the school year. This would not be eligible to tax credits, but we would be able to then give these employees some paid leave, and it would also then not be available to the casual and summer staff unless they worked last year and did not use all their. Option 4 would be to implement the plan for limited uses. It might not be eligible for tax credits if they are available, and there will still be staff who would not qualify for leave and have exhausted their sick leave. Option 5 would be to allow staff to work from home to the extent possible. The staff will be working and they won't have to take unpaid leave. We'll still have to hire a sub, but we do have some staff in the district who are not able to work from home, such as our custodial staff, our food service staff, and our paraprofessionals. And we've also found out last spring that many of our staff do not have sufficient internet access at home, and we do not have any hotspots available to loan out to staff at this point. The recommendation Amy and I came up with is to implement option 3 through the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. It is also the end of second quarter. So for payroll taxes, it just makes it cleaner for us to go to the end of the quarter. The qualifications for leave would be the employee or dependent is sick with COVID, is awaiting a COVID test, is receiving a COVID vaccine, or has been ordered to quarantine by the different individuals listed there, and they would have to fill out the emergency paid sick leave form. The emergency paid sick leave form is not new. Anyone who's taken COVID leave to date has had to complete it. Any questions for Amy or I?
Anna?
Is it possible to add option 5 to any of the other options? I'm just wondering, I sub sometimes, and I've had some teachers who have recorded videos of themselves, and I think if they were quarantining, they would just as easily be able to stream in. Would that be an option to use that to be paid to work from home instead of taking this? Can we do either or where people get to choose if it's an option for them with their position?
We would have to check with administration on their point of view on that.
Yeah, I know that one teacher suggested that in an email, maybe to all of us or to me. And so at first glance, I thought that is a fantastic idea because it's, being creative. There's some concerns with, why would we be starting that practice now and not earlier, especially if we're doing something retroactively. So I'm hesitant to say yes. I wish I could say yes. But I think there'd be some unforeseen, consequences.
Arlen?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. If we were to use option 2, if I understand that right, that would be the one that would grant an additional 10 days beyond the ones that were there for last year, but only until June 4th. Do we have any number of how much money that would cost us if we didn't get our credits or whatever back? What is the cost to us to go and do this without getting credits? Because that would be back paying COVID leave for April and May.
And I would have to go back and check how many days have been taken so far. I don't have that number with me. But it would also depend on what bargaining group they were in, and I know Holly's tracking it, I just don't have the number with me today.
Other questions?
If I can follow up, how likely are we going to be get any kind of credits on any of these programs?
The
If we follow
revised, it is not likely. The revised 941 instructions came out middle of last week, and they look like we would get the tax credits we got under the Families First Coronavirus Act, which was just the credit for the employer paid Social Security and Medicare, and not for the wages.
I'm just going to make a statement that I wish I had a little more information what the cost would be, but I really think option 2 might be the way I'm favoring at this time. I don't want to get into commitment going through the summer, but I also understand those that have used up all their sick leave and then had COVID leave because of quarantine. And I know some people maybe aren't real pleased with how I stated things last meeting about quarantine and trying to make a determination one way or another, but I just think that maybe option 2 is something that we should consider.
Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. Jackie, those options you laid out here today, which is probably too many. However, do they start April 1st then through June, whatever date you have on them?
We could implement them any date from April 1st through September 30th.
So you talked about going back, that's why I asked. So in essence, we could implement it starting tomorrow through June 4th, so to speak.
We could.
But the end of the day is, and I've said this at the agenda meeting, there's 23 people that have exhausted their sick leave for this calendar year, and they're all over the board. So it's not the custodians, it's not all paras, it's not all teachers, it's all that group together, and not everybody can work from home. I get that. So 23 or 26, what is the number?
23.
23 out of how many employees we have that are receiving sick leave benefit?
That are receiving sick leave benefit, not casual employees, correct?
I want somebody that has sick leave. You just said the 23 that, what are those, what does that number include? How many of those?
Of our regular full-time and part-time staff that are on contract is about 445.
So it's, my math here in my head here, that's less than 5%. And in healthcare, I was a union person. We argued and negotiated for benefits, health insurance, vacation, sick leave, all that. It's a benefit that people have. And we're paying out when they leave employment, full-time employees, each contract is different. So there's a payout of dollars that a retired or a person leaving the school district gets upon leaving employment through any means or through retirement.
It depends on the contract.
So, and it's at those dollars at the time that they leave, not today's dollars.
Correct.
So that's cost by not using them, and some people don't use them, I get it. It's a benefit to use when you need it and for whatever reason you're sick and all that. there is a cost to sick leave that people don't use to the district. I mean, I can tell you stories on that, but so, okay.
Yeah, there'd be a immediate cost, such as the cost of a substitute,
Right.
as well as longer term costs that you just described, you know, in terms of payments.
And my question is, where does that money come from if we grant it again? That's my question.
Jackie?
Whatever fund the employee is paid out of.
Specifically, it could be, most would be general fund,
Right.
but it could also be food service fund or community education
Yeah,
fund.
we don't know where those, and we don't need to
Right.
know where those 23 employees are. What's their work, all that, but that's public information.
Jennifer?
I think Holly's in front of me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Holly, I'm sorry.
Thank you. That's okay. That's okay. Quick example. So I had to have my surgeries this year. I had to exhaust my sick days because the doctor accidentally broke my nose. And it was something that happened in surgery. And so had I gotten COVID on top of that, I would have had those extra days from the state. Let's say I got really sick and I had to, use extra days. My concern is for that 5%, Jim. And I understand what you're saying financially. And one thing St. Paul did was that you could apply to use the sick bank that people donated sick days to, but I could only use them after I'd exhausted 5 unpaid days. And I got right to 4.5 of unpaid days. So I couldn't use that sick bank that people from St. Paul had donated sick days to. So where are we at? Do we do any kind of sick day donation in Red Wing?
We do, and it depends on the contract, what needs to be done to access that. In some contracts, you need to be out for as many as 90 days.
Yeah, and some employees have that ability, depending on the contract, and some employees do not, because not all contracts include that provision.
Now Jennifer, sorry about that.
Actually, Anna.
Oh my gosh. It's okay. Somebody needs to watch this. Cue for me better. Anna, sorry.
Okay. I also am in favor of option 2. I think that COVID is a weird extenuating circumstance. And, there's a whole variety of reasons why people may have exhausted their sick time and may have already used the 10 days, especially if you have kids who have had to quarantine, or, I think we think about it being very generally that, oh, you have to quarantine for 14 days, and then you're done. But I know at least 2 people who have ended up having to quarantine for more like a month because some people in their household got sick and they had to wait until they tested negative to then start their next 14-day quarantine. So I think that COVID is an extreme situation. We're talking about a relatively small number of people, but with a huge impact to those individual people. I hate to make decisions that are gonna cost the district exorbitant amounts of money, but I think in this case, it's the right thing to do for those people who are affected, and certainly without, any faults of their own. It's just a weird situation, and we're asking our employees to quarantine when it's necessary and for children to be quarantined to try to reduce the spread in the district, which we've done a fantastic job of. But I think that we need to compensate those people if we can, and I just think that's the right option.
Now Jennifer.
Thank you. I agree, either option 2 or option 3, my thinking is that we have given our staff 10 days from September through April. And I think our staff deserves to have it for the rest of the school year. Like we've discussed before, COVID is not gone. People are still quarantining, especially in April and May. Now it's a little bit better, but especially throughout April, there was a lot of quarantining going on. And I just think that we need to make sure that we provide something for our staff. I'm not clear right now on whether I would go with option 2 or 3. I don't know if maybe, so option 2 would be the additional 10 days. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's the main difference. Are there any other differences between the two?
No. The biggest difference is the additional 10 days.
Okay. Would the time be the same as far as this one says, option 2 says until June 4th, but the other one, we're thinking until June 30th, or would they? Is that up to
We
us?
could end either of them on June 30th.
Okay.
The downside to ending option 2 on June 30th would be any staff who worked at the pool in June,
Right.
or part-time Kids Junction staff who worked in June would get 10 days.
Okay. I will make a motion that we go with option 3.
Which is what the recommendation is? Is that correct?
Is that your motion, Anna?
Yes.
I would second that.
Anna made the motion. Do we want to read the whole motion? I think that would be important. I will read it. The recommended motion is, I move to allow employees to use any remaining COVID leave days/hours that are remaining from the Families First Coronavirus Response Act from April 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021, which is option 3. Qualifications for leave would be that the employee or a dependent is sick with COVID, is awaiting a COVID test result, is receiving a COVID vaccine, or has been ordered by the Minnesota Department of Health, healthcare provider, or the COVID response team to quarantine. Employees who wish to access the leave would need to complete the emergency paid sick leave form. Anna made that motion and it is seconded by Jennifer. Is there any other discussion? Any other discussion? Mr. Derricks?
I just want to clarify, so this is allowing up to 10 days total from the start of coronavirus until June 30th, is that correct? It's not 10 plus a potential for 10 more that we had approved for those January through March, because some people maybe got 20 days. If they could have had potentially 20 days, they had 10 days last year, and then we gave an additional 10.
We didn't give an additional 10.
We only extended
We only
it?
extended it.
Okay, that's what I want to get clarified. So we're just looking at
Pushing back the deadline again.
the 10 days deadline again, which does not do anything for those that may have been on it before and then had to quarantine students or their children at home afterwards. Just trying to keep it all straight in my head. Thank you.
Good question. Other discussion? All right, then we will take a roll call vote on that motion.
Whoops.
Holly?
Jackie, have you gotten a number yet for the third allotment?
No. The Department of Ed is hoping to get it out by the end of May.
Would that impact this?
No.
Where does that money then? Is it the second allotment, or is it no allotments that we can use the COVID money for sick days and para? I mean,
There
and
has not been an allowable use under our grant funding.
So it's all out of the general fund.
Correct.
Thank you.
Call the question.
All right, we're gonna take a roll call vote, starting with Jennifer Tift,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
No.
Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
No.
Ms. Ostendorf,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. So that passes 5-2. All right, the next item on our agenda is insurance coverage. Looks like you're
I'm
back
back
on. Jackie.
So we have our, what's called our ancillary insurance coverage. We went out for bids in February and March. On the call with me, I have Amy is on yet, but I also have Logan Tufte from IntelliSense to help answer questions if anyone has any questions on the process or the decision. So we met with the Labor Management Committee to decide to take this out for bids. Proposals were in the Eagle in February and they were due back on the 22nd. It was also discussed at an LMC meeting on the 19th and May 4th. The decision was made to change our dental carrier effective 1/1/22 to Blue Cross Blue Shield. You can see the justification there in the board packet. It was also decided to add a voluntary vision coverage effective 1/1/22, also through Blue Cross Blue Shield. This would be voluntary and employee paid if they chose to elect this coverage. We also voted to change the voluntary accidental death and dismemberment, that's what AD&D stands for, to a voluntary life and accidental dismemberment policy effective 7/1/21. And this would change to a new carrier called Guardian. Our old policy would only, our old voluntary policy, because it was an AD&D only policy, only paid out if you had died of an accident. And the new policy would pay out if you died of an accident or natural causes. So we thought that was a improved benefit for our employees. And we also chose, when we took out the basic life, so the district paid life and accidental death and dismemberment, long-term disability and EAP insurance, which has been historically through Madison National or National Insurance. We've chosen to change that also to Guardian Life Insurance Company effective 7/1/21. Are there questions?
I'm just wondering, who all is part of the
Labor management?
Yes.
There's a representative from each bargaining group that is part of that.
At least one, it depends on the size of the bargaining group.
And don't we have a board member, right, on the Labor Management Committee?
Yes, Anna is our rep, but she has been unable to attend the meetings.
Any
I got a
questions? Yes, Mr. Bryant.
Hello, Logan.
Hi there.
Lynn's not here tonight.
Lynn had a prior engagement actually, so he was unable to be here. So I'm here in his place. I actually, as a relationship manager for Red Wing Public Schools, am responsible for being the primary contact with the carriers and actually generating the analysis documents presented to the LMC. So that's why I'm here in his stead today.
Well, say hi to him for me. I've known Lynn.
Well, happy to do so.
And so Superintendent Anderson, the cost to the district on these plans is for Jackie?
Yeah, I'm
One
gonna have
second,
to defer to
pull up the other
Jackie.
document.
Some of them are at no cost because
Right.
it's, the voluntary ones are employee paid, and so it'd just be the difference in the dental and some of the other ones.
I'm
While
just talking about the next fiscal year.
total cost for these plans, annual premium is around $277,000, of which the district probably pays the majority.
On the voluntary plans?
Not on the voluntary plans, that's on the basic life.
Yep.
We fully pay the
Yep.
basic life, the long-term disability, and for a single dental plan on most bargaining groups.
And I just want to make sure that everybody that's listening knows that there's a difference between that and the word voluntary was put out there on a number of things. So there is a cost. And what, you know, what the cost was last year or this current year for those district responsibility plans?
About the same. This
Okay.
was, with going out to bid, we got almost a flat renewal.
Good. That's good to know. Thank you.
Yes. Other questions? All right, then I would look for a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair. The recommendation.
The recommendation is to approve Blue Cross Blue Shield as the district's dental carrier effective 1/1/2022, to add the option of voluntary vision coverage through Blue Cross Blue Shield effective 1/1/2022, and to approve Guardian Life as the district's carrier for basic life, AD&D, long-term disability, and voluntary life, and AD&D coverage effective 7/1/2021. Motion made by Jim. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Holly. Any other discussion?
I'm in the queue.
Mr. Derricks.
I will be abstaining on this due to a potential conflict of interest.
Yeah, and I don't, this has nothing to do with health insurance, Madam Jackie, right? It's just all the voluntary things.
It's all of the non-health insurance related coverage.
I don't think I have anything on that, so. I can vote.
Okay, well, we will take a roll call vote then, starting with Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Ms. Buck.
Aye.
Mr. Derricks is
Abstain.
abstaining. Ms. Ostendorf.
Aye.
Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Ms. Tift.
Aye.
And chair votes aye, so that passes 6-0 with one abstaining. Thank you. That's a lot of information to put together, Jackie. We appreciate that. And we're happy to hear that there's a basically flat renewal. So that's why we go out for bids, and we appreciate Logan for you being here this evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so the next and last item on our agenda this evening is the process for evaluation of superintendent. So Mr. Bryant and Superintendent Anderson and I met at 2 agenda meetings ago to discuss the mid-year evaluation. And then there was some questions brought up about the instrument being used. And so we paused on our current plan, and I did speak with members of MSBA, in particular Barb Dorn. She is the person in charge of all superintendent evaluations and superintendent findings if we need to hire somebody new. So she's kind of our go-to person there. A couple of things that she said was, one, she commended us for doing a mid-year evaluation because many, many districts do not. And this is just our second attempt at adding this back in. I don't know how history has gone in the way past, but as long as I've been on the board, we haven't done a mid-year evaluation. So it had been deemed prior that it was good to not wait a full 11 or 12 months before we evaluate the superintendent. So we did add in just a mid-year evaluation to kind of see how things were going. And it was recommended when it was decided 1.5 or 2 years ago that the mid-year evaluation would be to just look at the 4 or the 5, the goals that the board had set for the superintendent, see how we're doing on those goals. That was kind of the history of how we've come to this mid-year evaluation. MSBA said, we can talk ad nauseum about how we want to do this. We can split hairs all we want on that, but we should actually have this conversation. How does this board feel we should do a mid-year evaluation? And so thank you, Holly, for bringing it up and for helping us to pause and take a deep breath and figure out how we do want to move forward with that. In your agenda packet, we've put in there kind of a timeline of what we have discussed thus far and kind of how the roadmap of where we are going to go. But I will, Jim, you have your name in the queue. I'll pass that to you.
If you're done, Madam Chair.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Holly, thank you for bringing that up on that question. I think it was very relevant to us to come back and have the board have input. We discussed further the fact that the superintendent sent out the survey, it comes online, then he gets it back and then he forwards it to the chair. Well, we've changed that process where the chair now sends it out. The chair has the password. The chair receives it. It's just a way it should be done. We did add number 9. You know, because of some of the things that have happened the last whatever several months, we felt we should address some of those things through the evaluation process, because evaluation, as the chair stated, is a tool to gauge how the person's doing, whoever that person may be, instead of waiting and then saying, well, 11 months ago, this happened. Well, why didn't you tell me now? Or you did something really great 8 months ago. Why are you telling me now? Those type of things. So with this, there's a few glitches on here that I think we need to change, because on a number of them, it says goal from November 16th, 2021. To my knowledge, we haven't reached November 16th, 2021 yet.
Feels like it.
Feels like it, yeah. But I think we also should have some type of a scoring thing on number 9. We talked a little bit about that. We all agreed that there should be something there besides the 4 or 5 things that we talked about, how other things are going, because there might be some things that we need to be brought to the attention. I think our plan was to unveil it, tonight, and I get it now. We got another week with Memorial Day. So I'm thinking if this approves tonight by the board, we'll send it out and get it back by Memorial Day or before. That way we can talk about it on June 1st at the agenda meeting, or how you want to do the closed session, not the total findings, but just talk how we got it, and then bring it to the board, which the superintendent then at the June 7th meeting with a public summary on June 21st. Am I correct on that time frame? I think with this now?
I think that we're open to the time frame after we have a discussion about how we want to proceed. So I'm completely open to what we do and how we do it, as long as we all feel comfortable with the process. So Holly.
I just want to thank you for putting together all of that information to kind of give us a background of where we talked about it, when we talked about it, and what we're looking at moving forward. So thank you. I appreciate that, number 1. So I was looking through Article 3, evaluation of the superintendent, for the proposed school board policy handbook. And my reservation is that it's still a proposed policy handbook. So I am in favor of doing a mid-year something at some point. Like I wrote, I'm not so sure it's prudent to do it financially, mid-year before the financial year is done. That to me doesn't seem like that makes sense financially. In moving forward with this superintendent or a future superintendent, it still feels kind of messy. And I would really like us to have this board policy draft handbook looked at more closely, so that we're actually following that as we go into the next evaluation, whatever instrument we use. Yet my issue wasn't necessarily instrument. It was, we all have a say, the timing of it, and then trying to find that, because Carson, you did send that to us, and then you said, send me back revisions or any ideas by April 13th. And to be honest, I was looking at the 2 bullet point things that you had sent us in terms of revision. So I wasn't focused on this component as much, but I like it that you put it in this packet for us to kind of, look at. So my two issues are we following our own policy, which is 304, based on the superintendent's, job description, something about the job position description? Does that second evaluation that you put together fall in line with the position description? And can the board members, decide if that's what they want to use, or if they want to use one full instrument all the way through?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fine with whatever the board wants to discuss around that. I just think we should be really clear about the school board policy handbook, which is currently in draft form, before we jump ahead and do an evaluation outlining strategically how we should do it, just from a legal standpoint.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Holly. I did talk with Barb about that at MSBA, and I read her our policy. And that's kind of where she said, we could split hairs on that all day, because it comes down to interpretation. And, one board might see it one way, and now we've got, several new board members who might interpret it differently. And so that's why it's really great to have this discussion. So I very much appreciate that. So I'm completely open to how we proceed from here. Do we want to continue on with this instrument that was in the board packet as it is? I will say that I do have a little bit of a hesitation. I know it was the superintendent's idea to include those strategic directions. And I think it's excellent that the board looks at how we're doing as a district with the strategic directions. I'm not always sure that while the superintendent is in charge of those directions and implementing them through administration and staff, I don't know that, we're tasked with providing an evaluation on the superintendent's job performance, which can include the strategic direction. But I feel like if we really want to deep dive into the strategic direction and how the district is going, that might be more of a school board evaluation, if you will, our self-evaluation, that we could include that in that piece. I'm completely open to however we want to do it. I'm just mostly concerned with getting feedback to the superintendent in a timely manner. If we're concerned about things, he needs to hear them. If we want to praise him for certain things, he needs to hear that too. And I want, like Jim said, doesn't make sense to bring up something 8 months ago if we didn't bring it up 8 months ago. It's kind of past. So do I have any other board members have any other thoughts on how we'd like to proceed? Anna's in the queue.
Yeah, so because I'm a new board member, I have not been through any form of superintendent evaluation before. My understanding is that the one that's done in the fall is more a general MSBA directed. It's not about our specific goals, correct? It's about,
and it can include those goals, but it's much more lengthy and formal, if you will.
Okay.
I would say
Broader,
that's what they call
broader too. Probably broader. It's
broader.
It got moved because Holly and I first got on in 19. They had one right away, the full evaluation, and then it got changed to, doing one 18 months from then, the full one. And so that kind of got cumbersome. Now we're looking at a midterm, which he's all for. It should help the organization. For somebody that's done a number of evaluations on people, who's had them done on me a number of times, they're unpleasant. Unpleasant to do them and unpleasant to receive them. However, they're a necessary tool in making an operation flow and succeed. I can't, well, let me say, I can't tell you how to do it. However, if you give everybody the top score the first time, there's no place to improve. If you give them the bottom score, then they should have had that conversation quite a while ago. And so they are a tool that I've found to be necessary, but unpleasant is really the correct, probably word that I use. So.
Another question. So Jim, you were talking about number 9. All I see for number 9 is the other feedback, but you're talking about having a score.
Well, how, you know, there was no place during the 8 questions to bring up anything else that you want to talk about.
Right.
So, and I don't know how you could score that either. I just threw it out there for people's minds to start thinking about it. But if you're going to put something good or bad on there, it should have some volume to it, some value one way or the other. And I'm not quite sure how to do that, other than list them as goals and figure out a way, and then do our public summary or through the closed session, address those more.
I don't know how a scoring would work unless it was like an overall thing, because like if I choose to bring up, you know, topic A and score it some way, and Jennifer brings up topic B and scores it some way, it's not comparing apples to apples. Right. So I don't see how a score would really work in that.
Right.
Especially because what goes in number 9 is going to be an individual decision. It's not, you know, based on a collective.
Right.
You're correct, but I just threw it out there, and after I said, I thought the same things, like, how are we going to score it? But I'll throw it out there, and you bet. So
maybe it's something that we can discuss, like you said, in the closed session, the items that are on there.
Right. Well, and Barb Dorn at MSBA had talked about, you know, we can have this mid-year evaluation, whatever we want it to be. We can look at specific instruments, and, you know, we can have it, you know, and I think you said it well in your outline, Superintendent Anderson, that, you know, if we're going to have goals, they should be measurable. We need to be able to, you know, the SMART goals. But, you know, Barb said too, that if, you know, we have to, we can do specific numbers, we can have it be just qualitative. You know, we could have just a discussion. Here's your 4 goals, and we could just all provide feedback on those 4 goals. We could have numbers rated, or we don't have to have numbers rated. It's all up to this board how we want to proceed. You know, I personally think what are good are goals if you only look at them once a year. So that's why I always thought that at least having a pause in the middle of the year to look at the goals. How are we doing? You know, where are you at? Why are we even giving you goals if we're not going to look at them again and talk about them and see how you're doing on them? Those are personal goals that, you know, this board came up with. So, you know, that's kind of where the goals and why the goals are a part of this instrument. How we rate those.
And we talked about getting those goals. I don't see those goals that we set in.
Yeah, those 4 goals are in here.
Are they in there? Did I miss something?
Yep.
That's the
we gave him
November.
4 goals, and they're all here in this instrument that's attached in
the instrument.
And and what was in the board
missed
packet.
5, 6, 7, and 8 are all goals. Those were the November 2021.
Yep.
That should be
Jennifer,
2020.
did I miss you in the queue?
Oh, no, I just put my name in there. Thank you. I was just going to say that I appreciate this evaluation. I think it's good. I like having the goals on there, like you were just saying, Pam. I'm just thinking about the strategic directions, and I agree that those feel a lot bigger than just the responsibility of the superintendent. But it might be interesting to include it in this evaluation and then also include it in our self-evaluation, both, looking at it from 2 different perspectives. I also think that it's okay to do the evaluation without having the concrete policy, because we do have the draft policy. And I mean, I could be completely wrong here, being new, but I just think that it's having the draft, it's something we try and see how it goes, and perhaps make changes to the policy as needed. I'm not sure if that's logistically the way things should work, but it seems like a possibility to me. So thank you for putting this together. I think this is well done, simple but to the point, and touches on all the things that we should discuss at this mid-year point.
I was right before Jennifer, so I just wanted to, sorry.
Sorry, Holly.
That's okay, because Jennifer, I'm glad I got to hear what Jennifer had to say. I have a significant amount of training in data collection and baseline, where are we headed? So when we look at the rubric that's set up, we're surpassing expectations for implementation by spring. Somebody in the, somebody might think we are, but other of us might not, because what are we measuring? Do we have 25 computers and we want to get 100? And by that time, that's just a very general, but what are we actually measuring to say that we're, surpassing expectations? I don't even know what the expectations are, because the language is, establish career pathways by aligning. Well, how do we know? How I don't know if the curriculum is necessarily aligned to that, and if the teachers are teaching that, and if the kids are responding to that, and if we're going to be on the way to successful implementation. That's why I think it's really important that our instrument is solidified in a way that if we're going to measure something, we measure it with data, or we don't measure it at all and we just give feedback. Right? Like, I really like where we're headed with the pathways. I really like, but what I think we're missing is, instead of, we like rubrics, but they're really hard to measure if we don't have data to start out with. So we're at 10% of kids in the pathway program. We want to move it to 50. I don't know if we're at 5% or if we're already at 50%. And I don't want to shortchange any person who's trying to roll out that program because I don't have the information.
Right.
That's kind of where I'm coming with, like, a structured, we solidify it into our plan. And legally, if we were to ever get into a bind about words, it's really good to have the board approve the board policy packet and move it forward. And then we can always say, well, the whole board approved it. This is what we're going to do. Or it was a 5-2 vote, but this is the way we're going to move. So those are some of my thoughts around. That's why I was like, oh gosh, do we just go back and use the MSBA one? Because it's pretty clear, even though it's not clear for some of us, or do we just take the needs improvement stuff away and just give anecdotal what we think is happening? Because I don't feel qualified enough to measure whether or not, I don't know the discipline numbers. I don't know if the referrals have gone up. I don't know if they've gone down. I don't know if we've suspended more kids, less kids. I don't know how staff are interacting with kids once they get re-entered back into the school. I don't know any of those pieces enough to say we're highly effective or we're bombing out.
For this one, could we use the MSBA and then also do anecdotal questions for the goals? Just add the goals on without, the rating, and just for those 4 questions, type comments.
Well, what I think I hear you saying, Holly, is that it'd be good to just take those ratings out and give feedback on those 4 goals. Because really, if we're measuring strategic directions, those need to come from the staff. I think we have a director of teaching and learning who is in charge of looking at those numbers and those rubrics for that strategic direction, not necessarily the board's responsibility to know that or to measure that. Our goal is really to measure and give feedback to the superintendent so he can be as effective as he possibly can in his job. Positive feedback, negative feedback, areas for improvement. So, in that regard, I would say that an anecdotal, conversation, let's give feedback to those, let's just focus on those 4 goals, number 5, 6, 7, 8, and then have number 9 as all other, other feedback for the superintendent at this time. If you have specific examples, for example, goal number 5, goal for November 16, 2020 was equity planning. The district is committed to strengthening this area through the leadership and direction of the superintendent. So let's talk to the superintendent about how we feel, what we see is going well, and what we see is not going well, what we want to see more of.
So
That would be a great conversation and a great place for feedback.
it would be like a box that says strengths and then areas of improvement.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we can just put anecdotal, whatever we want to see. I mean, we could do that. That's why I was asking earlier about next topics for workshop, because this would be a perfect place to kind of dissect some of that.
Agreed.
And not try to push it further along, but give it some time. We could look at the handbook, then we could look at where we're headed with this and what is it that we want to accomplish. Because I hear you and Jim loud and clear, like, yes, it doesn't make sense to go 18 months without any feedback. That doesn't make any sense. But what does it look like to give feedback that's going to be effective and move the district forward, along with helping the superintendent make decisions to move the district forward?
Exactly.
Jim is in the queue.
Yep, Jim.
Thank you. Yeah, I apologize. Those goals are there, but I remember when we did the evaluation 6 months ago, we wrote out the goals, 4 or 5 bullet points, and that's what I was kind of looking for.
Oh, I can send that to you. Jim.
Yes, just send that, I think, to everybody instead of,
Sure.
because I thought got a little whatever. So I realized the goals were there, but I was looking for that separate, that goal bullet point that we put in his evaluation. So, and I'm not so sure if the wording is the same or not, and that's why I just wanted to check. So.
Sure. So if I can get a thumbs up, what I would like to do, and with Jim and I can work together on this, we can send out those 4 goals. Under each goal, you can write strengths or things that are going well, area of improvement for each of those goals, and then additional feedback. Maybe there's something else that you want to say about that. And then the 5th question will be just, please provide other feedback for the superintendent. So that'll be a catch-all if it's not in the first 4 goals. If you want to say something else that doesn't fit under those 4 things, that's kind of a catch-all category. Are we okay with at least just doing that piece so we can give feedback to the superintendent and then continue on? Maybe we add this as a workshop. July, maybe? I don't know what's in the queue for that, but Holly, you're in there, and then Arlen.
So I'm just going to quickly say back. Goal 5 is question number 1. And then the 5th question is the one Jim was saying, like, just general feedback, but not giving it a rating. Would the general feedback be areas of strength and areas of need? Would we still categorize it that way?
We can.
To kind of keep it consistent?
There's probably, it's whatever you want to put in there.
Yeah. I think that going in that direction to get something, and the board may not like it next time. They might go, oh yeah, that was icky, or yeah, that really worked well, or we were all over the map.
Right. And I think as long as we all understand that this is a work in progress and we're trying to figure out the best way forward, most districts don't do a midterm evaluation. So we're already ahead of the game a little bit in terms of being able to give the superintendent feedback, which I think is super important. Arlen, you're in the queue.
Thank you. I think this is a work in progress, going to the twice a year from the once a year that we were in before. And I think we were at the last meeting, a big step in the right direction. And then what I saw come out in the board pack today, I thought was a huge step in the right direction. And now, if I'm hearing what we're talking about, we're going to mess around with taking some of this out and only work on 4 items instead of 8 or 9 that are in here. I'm all for what's on the board packet for recommendations, see how it goes, and then take the next step. As far as setting policies and when the timing of those policies and stuff come through, I think that's irrelevant at that time. Certainly you want to look at it, but this is what's going on. This is our perception of what's going on with the superintendent. Let's just get going and get it going. Thank you.
Well, and I will say that Barb said that we were covered with that policy and what it says, because it said periodic evaluations. It doesn't say a specific date or time or a timeline. It just said periodic evaluations. And so we are covered that way under that policy.
And just an agreed upon instrument.
Correct. Can we all be in agreement with those? 4 questions would be the goals. The 5th question will be additional feedback. So 5 simple things. Give us your feedback on those 4 goals. And then the 5th question will be other. We're good?
Do we need a motion?
I don't know that we need a motion. This is.
I'd rather see you stay with what you got here, but
It
if
says,
everybody else wants it, I'll go with whatever we end up with, and I'll make my opinions known.
Sounds good.
Well, I think because the policy says approved by the school board, it would be good for us to have a motion. I
Yep.
think.
I agree.
Okay.
So I will make a motion that we conduct a mid-year evaluation using goals 1 through 4, which are currently 5 through 8, and then what's in the packet, along with an additional place for other feedback, with timing to be determined by the school board chair.
All right.
That work?
Yes.
I will
Mid-year
sec-
evaluation with focus on goals 1 through 4 and an additional place for other feedback.
With timing determined by board chair.
That was what was in the recommendation.
Timing determined by board chair.
I will second that.
All right, any other discussion? We'll take a roll call vote then on that, starting with Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Mr. Garris,
No,
Ms. Ostendorf,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Ms. Tift,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, so that passes 6-1. Awesome, thanks. Jim and I'll get to work right away on that. Appreciate all that great discussion and feedback.
Maybe tomorrow.
Maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow. All right. Then the only other thing is future topics and upcoming meetings. We do have a workshop next Monday, hybrid. The next board meeting is the 7th. We've got an agenda meeting on the 1st. We've got prom coming up and graduation. Anything else anybody would like to highlight that's coming up? Okay, see,
COVID numbers are going down.
COVID numbers are going down. Lots to celebrate there, for sure. All right, so then I'm just looking for a meeting or a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
I second it. Jim, I really said it first.
Seconded by Holly. We will start the roll call vote with Mr. Derricks,
aye.
Ms. Ostendorf,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Ms. Tift,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Ms. Buck.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, 7-0. We are adjourned at 7:38. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good meeting.
Have a good week.
Good job, everyone.
Just
Monday.
over an hour and a half. That's not bad.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
See you next time.
Goodbye.
7